I used to think getting robbed meant someone taking your stuff, but when you're alone in a foreign country and you wake up to silence in a room that was full of laughter just hours before, it's not your wallet that feels empty, it's you. I learned that the hardest theft isn't what they take from your pocket. It's what they take from the part of you that was still willing to trust. I flew halfway around the world to feel alive again. And for one night, I did. But by morning, I realized that feeling alive and being a fool sometimes look exactly the same. If our stories resonate with you, don't forget to like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. This story was sent to us by a viewer who asked to remain anonymous. He wanted other men to hear what happened so they don't make the same mistake. It was my third night in Bangkok, and I was still trying to figure out how to exist in a city that never stopped moving. I'd been wandering the streets of Silom for the past hour, jet-lagged and disoriented, watching the neon lights blur together like some kind of fever dream. The heat was suffocating even after dark. The air was thick with humidity and exhaust fumes, and the smell of street food cooking on every corner. The noise was constant, motorbikes screaming past, music pumping from open-air bars, people shouting in languages I didn't understand. And I was completely alone. I'd spent the first 2 nights hiding in my hotel room, ordering room service, telling myself I'd get out there tomorrow. But tomorrow kept coming, and I kept making excuses. I was 57 years old, freshly divorced, and I had no idea what I was doing halfway around the world. Back in Texas, I'd been a construction supervisor for 30 years. I knew how to read blueprints. I knew how to manage crews. I knew how to build things that lasted. But I didn't know how to be alone. My ex-wife had taken the house, the dog, and whatever was left of my confidence. The divorce had been messy. Not because we fought over money or property, but because we'd both realized we'd wasted 23 years pretending we were happy. She'd looked at me one morning over coffee and said, "I don't love you anymore, Gerald. I'm not sure I ever did." And that was it. No yelling, no drama. Just the quiet death of something I thought was permanent. My buddies at work told me to take a trip. Go somewhere crazy. Clear your head. Thailand, they said. You'll love it. Cheap beer, beautiful women, sunshine. So I booked a flight without thinking too hard about it. But standing there on that crowded street corner, watching couples walk past me hand in hand, watching groups of friends laughing over dinner, I didn't feel like I loved anything. I felt small, invisible. Like I was fading into the background of someone else's vacation photos. I kept walking until my feet hurt. I passed massage parlors with women sitting outside on plastic chairs. I passed street vendors selling fried insects and noodles. I passed clubs with bouncers and velvet ropes and music so loud I could feel it in my chest. And then I saw a bar on the corner. It was open air, packed with people. Music spilling out onto the sidewalk. The kind of place that looked friendly and dangerous at the same time. I told myself I'd have one drink. Just one. I pushed through the crowd and found a stool at the bar. The place was loud, chaotic, full of energy I didn't understand. Beautiful women everywhere, tourists, locals. Everyone seemed to know what they were doing except me. I ordered a beer from the bartender, a young Thai guy with a shaved head and a friendly smile. He brought me a singha, and I paid him with a bill I didn't know the value of. He gave me change and I nodded like I understood. I took a long drink and tried to look like I belonged. That's when I saw her. She was standing near the far end of the bar, talking to a group of people, laughing at something someone said. She was tall, maybe 5 to 10 or so, dressed in a tight black dress that hugged every curve. Her hair was long and dark, falling over one shoulder in waves. Her skin was smooth and golden, and when she smiled, the whole room seemed to shift toward her. She had this presence, this magnetism. I couldn't stop staring. I knew I was being obvious. I knew I looked like every other middle-aged tourist gawking at beautiful women in Bangkok. But I couldn't help it. She was stunning in a way that made me feel stupid for even looking. And then she looked back. Our eyes met for just a second, and she smiled. Not a polite smile. Not a fake smile. A real one, like she saw me. My heart started pounding. I looked away, embarrassed, and took a long drink of my beer. When I glanced back, she was walking toward me. I panicked. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I didn't know where to look. I felt like a teenager at his first school dance. She sat down on the stool next to mine without asking, and suddenly the noise in the bar didn't seem so loud anymore. "You look lost," she said. Her voice was soft, but confident. She had a slight accent, but her English was perfect. Better than mine, probably. I laughed nervously and shook my head. "I'm not lost, just new." She smiled and leaned in a little closer. I could smell her perfume, something floral and expensive. "New is the same as lost in Bangkok," she said. She waved the bartender over and ordered 2 drinks in Thai. He nodded and started mixing something with vodka and lime. She didn't ask me if I wanted a drink, she just ordered. And I didn't stop her. I was too stunned to speak. She handed me a glass and raised hers. "To being lost," she said. I clinked my glass against hers and drank. It was strong. Vodka with something sweet. I wasn't paying attention to the drink. I was paying attention to her. She asked me where I was from, and I told her Texas. She laughed and said she'd never been, but she'd seen it in movies. "Cowboys and big hats," she said. "Deserts and ranches." I told her I wasn't a cowboy. I told her I'd spent my whole life building houses in the suburbs of Houston. She said I looked like a cowboy anyway. I didn't know if that was a compliment or not, but I took it as one. She raised an eyebrow. "Retired? You're too young." I laughed. "Tell that to my back." She smiled and touched my arm lightly. Her fingers were warm, soft. "So, what are you doing here?" "In Bangkok." I hesitated. I didn't want to tell her the truth, that I was running away, that I didn't know who I was anymore, that I'd woken up one morning in an empty house and realized I had nothing left to hold on to. No wife, no kids, no purpose, just a pension and a one-way ticket to somewhere that wasn't home. So I told her a softer version. I needed a change, needed to see something different. She nodded slowly, like she understood more than I was saying. "Bangkok is good for that. It changes you." I asked her what her name was. She smiled and said, "Fern." I told her my name was Gerald. She repeated it slowly, like she was testing how it sounded. "Gerald. I like it. Strong name." I didn't feel strong, but hearing her say it made me sit up a little straighter. We talked for a while, about nothing and everything. She asked me if I was married. I told her I used to be. She asked if I had kids. I said no. She nodded like that made sense, like she'd already guessed. I asked her about herself, and she told me she'd grown up in the countryside, somewhere north of Bangkok, a small village I'd never heard of. She came to the city when she was 18. She said it was hard at first, but she learned how to survive. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. I just wanted to keep listening to her voice. She had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. Like everything I said mattered. My ex-wife never listened like that. She used to look at her phone while I talked. She used to nod without hearing a word. But Fern listened. She leaned in. She asked follow-up questions. She laughed at my stupid jokes about Texas and construction sites and the weather back home. And for the first time in months, I felt like maybe I wasn't invisible after all. Maybe I was still capable of being interesting. Maybe I still had something to offer. We ordered another round, and then another. I lost track of how many drinks we had. The bar got louder. The music got faster. But we stayed in our little bubble, talking and laughing like we'd known each other for years. She told me about her friends who worked in the city. She told me about the tourists she'd met over the years. Some good, some bad. She said most men came to Bangkok looking for something they couldn't find at home. I asked her what they were looking for. She smiled and said, "Themselves." But they never find it. I asked her what she was looking for. She looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Someone honest." I didn't know what to say to that. So I just nodded. After our third drink, she leaned back and looked at me with a kind of softness I wasn't expecting. Her smile faded a little. Her eyes got serious. "You know I'm a ladyboy, right?" she said. Her voice was calm, matter of fact, like she was asking me if I knew what time it was. I froze. My brain went blank for a second. I hadn't known. I hadn't even considered it. I looked at her again, really looked, and I felt something shift inside me. I could see it now. The subtle angles of her face. The way her hands were just a little bigger than I'd noticed before. But it wasn't disgust, I felt. It wasn't anger. It was just surprise. And then, almost immediately, it didn't matter. She was still sitting there, still smiling at me, still making me feel like I mattered. She was still the first person in months who'd made me laugh, who'd made me feel seen. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I know. She studied my face for a moment, like she was trying to decide if I was lying. Then she grinned and reached across the table to touch my hand. Good. I like honest men. I felt a strange mix of embarrassment and relief. I was embarrassed that I hadn't noticed, that I'd been so caught up in my own loneliness I'd missed something obvious. But I was relieved that she'd told me, that she'd given me the choice. And the truth was, it didn't change anything. I still wanted to keep talking to her. I still wanted to stay. So I said, I like you. She laughed softly. You don't even know me. I know enough. She squeezed my hand and didn't let go. We sat there for a while longer, just talking. She told me more about growing up in the countryside, about how her family didn't understand her, about how she'd saved money for 2 years to come to Bangkok, about how she'd learned to do her makeup and her hair and how to walk in heels, about how hard it was to find work, about how people looked at her on the street. She didn't say it with bitterness. She said it like it was just a fact, just part of her story. And I listened. I listened harder than I'd listened to anything in years. I wanted to tell her she was brave, that she was stronger than anyone I'd ever met. But I didn't know if that would sound condescending. So I just said, I'm glad you're here. She smiled. Me too. The bar started to empty out around midnight. The music got quieter. The lights got dimmer. People were filtering out onto the street, laughing and stumbling and calling for taxis. Fern looked at me and said, Do you want to go somewhere quieter? I knew what she was asking. I knew what it meant. And I hesitated. Not because I didn't want to, but because I was scared. Scared of getting hurt, scared of being stupid, scared of wanting something I couldn't have, scared that this was all some kind of setup and I'd regret it in the morning. She must have seen it on my face because she leaned in close and said, I'm not asking for money. I just want to spend more time with you. That line hit me harder than I expected. My ex-wife never wanted to spend time with me, not at the end. She was always busy, always tired, always somewhere else. And here was this woman, this stranger, telling me she wanted more time with me. Not my money, not a transaction, just time. I said yes. We walked outside, and she flagged down a taxi. The driver looked at us in the rearview mirror, and she gave him my hotel address in Thai. I hadn't told her where I was staying, but I must have mentioned it at some point, or maybe she just knew. We climbed into the back seat and the driver pulled into traffic. The ride felt surreal. The city lights blurred past the window. The traffic noise faded into the background. Fern rested her head on my shoulder, and I stared out at the chaos of Bangkok, feeling reckless and alive and terrified all at once. Her hair smelled like coconut and smoke. I could feel her breathing against my chest. I thought about my ex-wife. I thought about the empty house back in Texas. I thought about all the years I'd spent doing the right thing, playing it safe, following the rules. And where had it gotten me? Alone, divorced, lost. So I let myself have this. Just this one night. Just this one moment of feeling wanted. When we got to my hotel in Sukhumvit, she followed me through the lobby without a word. I kept expecting someone to stop us, to ask questions, to judge, but the clerk at the front desk didn't even look up. We took the elevator to the 5th floor, and I unlocked my door with shaking hands. My room was small, clean, nothing fancy. Just a bed, a desk, a TV mounted on the wall, and a window overlooking the street below. Fern walked in and looked around, then smiled. "This is nice," she said. I knew it wasn't, but it was nice of her to say. I offered her water. She said no. We sat on the edge of the bed, and for a moment, Neither of us said anything. The air conditioning hummed. A motorbike revved outside. I could hear voices in the hallway. Then she turned to me and asked, "Are you nervous?" I laughed. "Yeah. Me too," she said. I didn't believe her, but it was nice of her to say. We talked for a while longer, about Texas, about Bangkok, about what it's like to start over when you don't know where you're going. She told me more about her family, about her mother who cried when she left, about her father who wouldn't speak to her, about her younger brother who still called her sometimes, late at night, just to hear her voice. She told me about the first time she performed at a cabaret show, about how scared she was, about how the other girls helped her with her costume and her makeup, about how the audience clapped and she felt, for the first time, like maybe she was beautiful. I listened, and I felt something protective rise up in me. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to do this, that she deserved better than some lonely tourist in a cheap hotel room, but I didn't say it, because I was selfish, because I wanted her to stay, because I needed her to stay. She leaned in and kissed me. It was slow, soft, deliberate. Her lips tasted like vodka and lime. I hadn't been kissed like that in years, maybe ever. My ex-wife had kissed me like it was a chore, like something she had to do to keep the peace. But Fern kissed me like she meant it, like she wanted to. We lay down together, and for a few hours, I forgot about everything else. I forgot about the divorce, the empty house, the loneliness, the shame. I forgot about being 57, and lost and scared. I just existed in that moment with her. And it felt real. It felt like something that mattered. She was gentle, patient. She didn't rush. She asked me if I was okay. She asked me what I wanted. And when I didn't know how to answer, she just smiled and said, "It's okay. I'll take care of you." And she did. Afterward, we lay there in the dark, not speaking, just breathing, just being. I could feel her heart beating against my chest. I could feel the rise and fall of her ribs. I thought about how fragile everything was, how temporary, how this moment would end and I'd be alone again. But for now, I wasn't alone. For now, I had this. After we were done, she curled up beside me. I wrapped my arm around her and pulled her close. She fit perfectly against my chest. Her body was warm and soft. She whispered, "Thank you for tonight." Her voice was barely audible. I said, "Thank you." I meant it. I'd come to Bangkok looking for something. I didn't know what. An escape, maybe. A distraction. A reason to keep going. I stared up at the ceiling, listening to her breathe. The city hummed outside the window, horns honking, music playing somewhere far away, voices shouting in the street, but inside that room, everything was quiet, peaceful. I closed my eyes and let myself drift. I thought about how strange life was, how you could spend decades building something with someone, and it could all fall apart in a single conversation. And then you could fly halfway around the world and meet a stranger in a bar, and for one night, everything could make sense again. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring. I didn't know if I'd ever see Fern again. I didn't know if this was the start of something or just a beautiful mistake. But in that moment, it didn't matter. I felt safe. I felt wanted. I felt like maybe I could be okay. I fell asleep holding her, and I slept deeper than I had in years. I woke up slowly. The sunlight was pouring through the curtains, bright and hot. I could feel the heat of the day starting to settle into the room. The air conditioning had shut off at some point during the night. I reached over to pull Fern closer, but my hand hit empty sheets. I opened my eyes and sat up, groggy and confused. The bed was empty. I looked around the room. Her clothes were gone. Her bag was gone. The black dress she'd been wearing was nowhere to be seen. I called her name. Fern? Nothing. Just the sound of traffic outside. I stood up and walked to the bathroom. The door was open. Empty. I checked the closet. I looked under the bed. I even opened the balcony door and looked outside, like maybe she'd gone out for air or to smoke a cigarette. But she wasn't there. My stomach tightened. I told myself she'd just gone to get breakfast, or coffee, or maybe she'd gone home to change. Maybe she'd be back. But something felt wrong. The room felt too quiet, too still. I walked over to the desk where I'd left my wallet the night before. My phone was still there. My passport was still there. But my wallet was gone. I stood there, staring at the empty space for a long time, trying to make sense of it, trying to convince myself I was wrong. Maybe I'd put it somewhere else. Maybe I'd left it in my pants pocket. I turned and checked my jeans, which were crumpled on the floor next to the bed. Empty. Then I checked my bag. I always kept a backup credit card in the inside pocket, just in case. It was gone. The cash I'd tucked into the side pocket, about $300 in U.S. bills, was gone too. I checked my jacket, my pockets, the bathroom counter, the nightstand, under the bed again, under the mattress, in the closet. Nothing. Everything of value was gone. I sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. My hands were shaking. My chest felt tight. I felt like I couldn't breathe. I felt stupid, used, humiliated. I'd trusted her. I'd let her into my room. I'd believed her when she said she wasn't asking for money. I'd believed her when she said she just wanted to spend time with me. And while I was asleep, she'd gone through my things and taken everything. I kept replaying the night in my head, the way she'd smiled at me, the way she'd touched my hand, the way she'd kissed me. Had any of it been real? Or was it all part of the setup? Had she been planning this from the moment she sat down next to me at the bar? I felt like an idiot, a fool. Every warning I'd ever heard about Bangkok came flooding back. Don't trust anyone. Don't bring strangers to your room. Don't let your guard down. And I'd ignored all of it, because I was lonely, because I wanted to believe that someone could want me for something other than what I had in my wallet. I sat there for a long time, just staring at nothing. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just sat there, feeling the weight of what had happened settle over me like a heavy blanket. I sat on that bed for over an hour, maybe longer. I don't know. Time felt weird, distorted. I couldn't think straight. My mind was racing, but I couldn't land on a single clear thought. I had no money, no cards. I still had my phone and my passport, but that was it. I thought about calling the police, but what would I even say? I brought a ladyboy back to my hotel room and got robbed. I imagined walking into a police station and trying to explain what had happened. I imagined the look on their faces, the judgment, the smirk, the way they'd nod and take notes and do absolutely nothing. Because it was my fault. Because I'd been stupid, and they'd know it, and I'd have to stand there and admit it out loud. I couldn't do it. I couldn't admit what had happened. Not to them. Not to anyone. Instead, I picked up my phone and called my bank. I went through the automated system, punching in my account number and social security number, waiting on hold for 10 minutes while some generic hold music played. Finally, a woman picked up. I told her I needed to cancel my cards. She asked if they were lost or stolen. I said lost. She asked if I wanted to file a fraud report. I said no. She didn't push. She cancelled the cards and said new ones would be mailed to my address in Texas in 7 to 10 business days. I thanked her and hung up. Then I called my brother back in Texas. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, man, how's Thailand?" His voice was cheerful, relaxed. I could hear the TV in the background. Probably a football game. I told him I needed him to wire me some money. He went quiet for a second. What happened? I lied. I told him I lost my wallet on the street. Pickpocketed, probably. Happened in a crowded market. I didn't even feel it. He believed me. He asked how much I needed. I told him $500 would be enough to get me through the rest of the trip. He said he'd send it that day. He asked if I was okay. I said yeah. I said I was fine, just annoyed, just stupid. He laughed and said it happens to everyone. He told me to be careful. I said I would. I hung up and stared at the wall. I felt hollow, empty. Not just because of the money, but because I'd had to lie. Because I couldn't tell him the truth. Because the truth was too humiliating, too pathetic. I couldn't tell him that I'd fallen for the oldest trick in the book. That I'd let a beautiful stranger into my room because I was desperate to feel wanted. That I'd been so starved for affection, so hungry for connection, that I'd ignored every red flag and walked straight into disaster. I couldn't tell him that. So I lied, and the lie made me feel even worse. I left the hotel an hour later and walked the streets of Bangkok with no destination in mind. I had nowhere to go, no money for food, no energy to pretend I was a tourist. I just walked. The city that had felt magical the night before now felt cold and indifferent. The neon lights looked cheap in the daylight, tacky, desperate. The crowds felt suffocating. Everyone was moving with purpose, and I was just drifting. I passed the bar where I'd met Fern. It was closed. The metal gate was pulled down over the entrance. A stray dog was sleeping on the sidewalk outside. I stood there for a few minutes, staring at the spot where she'd been standing when I first saw her. I wondered if she was there right now behind that gate, getting ready for another night. I wondered if she was laughing with her friends about the stupid American she'd robbed. I wondered how many men she'd done this to. How many lonely tourists had sat in that same bar, had that same conversation, felt that same hope, and woken up to the same empty room. I wondered if anything she'd said to me was true. If her name was really Fern. If she'd really grown up in the countryside. If her family had really rejected her. Or if all of it was just part of the act. A story designed to make me trust her, to make me feel protective, to make me let my guard down. I kept walking. I found a bench near a canal and sat down. The water was brown and slow-moving. Trash floated on the surface. Plastic bottles, food wrappers, a plastic bag drifting like a jellyfish. Boats drifted past, long wooden boats packed with tourists wearing life jackets and sun hats, taking photos of the temples and the houses built on stilts over the water. Everyone around me was smiling, laughing, living their best life. Couples holding hands, families pointing at things and taking selfies. And I was sitting there feeling like the biggest idiot in the world. I thought about going back to the hotel, but I couldn't stand the idea of being in that room, of staring at the empty desk, of smelling her perfume still lingering in the air. So I just sat there on that bench, watching the city move around me, feeling like a ghost. 2 days later, I picked up the money my brother wired me from Western Union. The office was small, tucked into a side street off Sukhumvit. I waited in line behind a Filipino woman sending money home and a British guy who looked about as lost as I felt. When it was my turn, I gave the clerk my ID and the reference number my brother had texted me. She counted out the bills, $500 in U.S. currency, and handed them to me with a smile. I thanked her and walked outside. I stood on the sidewalk, staring at the bills in my hand. I had money again. I could eat. I could survive. I could pay for a taxi. I could buy a ticket home if I wanted to. But none of it felt like a victory. It felt like a band-aid on a wound that went deeper than money. I went to a small cafe nearby and ordered coffee. It was bad coffee. Weak and bitter, served in a tiny cup with too much sugar. I sat there alone, watching people walk by, and I thought about Fern. I thought about texting her, just to ask why, just to hear her voice one more time. But I didn't have her number. She'd never given it to me. I'd never thought to ask. We'd spent hours talking, and I'd never once asked for her number. I'd just assumed we'd figure it out in the morning. I'd assumed there would be a morning. I realized how little I actually knew about her, how little any of it had been real. She'd told me what I wanted to hear. She'd asked me questions that made me feel interesting. She'd laughed at my jokes. She'd made me feel seen, and I'd given her everything she needed to take what she wanted. I finished my coffee and left. I walked back to my hotel and spent the rest of the day lying on the bed, staring at the ceiling, trying not to think about her. But I couldn't stop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. The way she'd smiled at me in the bar. The way she'd leaned in close. The way she'd said, "I just want to spend more time with you." I spent my last few days in Bangkok alone. I didn't try to go out. I didn't try to meet anyone. I just existed. I visited a temple one afternoon, Wat Pho, where the giant golden Buddha lies on its side, stretching almost the entire length of the building. I walked around it slowly, watching tourists take photos, listening to the sound of coins dropping into metal bowls for good luck. I didn't drop any coins. I didn't pray. I just walked. I ate street food from a cart near my hotel, pad thai that was too sweet, fried chicken that was too salty. I didn't care, I just ate because I had to. I watched the city move around me, and I didn't talk to anyone. I became invisible again, just another face in the crowd. One night, sitting on the balcony of my hotel room, I finally admitted the truth to myself. It wasn't the money that hurt. $500, a couple of credit cards. It wasn't about that. It was the fact that for one night, I'd felt wanted. I'd felt seen. I'd felt like I mattered to someone. And it was all a lie. That's what I couldn't get over. Not the theft, the illusion. I thought someone saw me. I thought someone looked at me, this broken, lonely, middle-aged man, and decided I was worth their time. But Fern didn't see me. She saw a mark. She saw a lonely man with a wallet full of cash and a heart full of need. And I gave her everything she needed to take what she wanted. I sat there on that balcony, staring out at the lights of Bangkok, and I cried. Not because I was angry, but because I was heartbroken, because I'd flown halfway around the world to feel alive again, and for one night, I did. But by morning, I realized that feeling alive and being a fool sometimes look exactly the same. I cried because I'd wanted so badly to believe that someone could want me, that I was still capable of being loved, that I wasn't just a used-up, thrown-away man with nothing left to offer, and Fern had made me believe it. For a few hours, she'd made me believe it. And then, she'd taken it all away. I boarded my flight back to Texas 3 days later. I sat by the window in economy and watched Bangkok disappear beneath the clouds. The city sprawled out below me, a patchwork of roads and buildings and canals and green spaces. From up here, it looked beautiful, ordered, almost peaceful. But I knew better now. I knew what was hiding in those streets. I felt nothing as we climbed higher. No relief. No anger, just exhaustion. The man sitting next to me was chatty, middle-aged, British. He smelled like cologne and airport coffee. He asked if it was my first time in Thailand. I nodded. He smiled. Did you love it? I paused. I thought about Fern. I thought about the bar. I thought about the way she'd looked at me that first night, like I was someone worth knowing. I thought about the way she'd kissed me, the way she'd whispered thank you before I fell asleep. Then I said, I thought I did. He laughed, like I'd made a joke, like I was being modest. I didn't correct him. I closed my eyes and tried to sleep, but all I could see was her face. The way she smiled, the way she touched my hand, the way she looked at me when she told me I wasn't lost, just starting over. I wondered if she ever thought about me. Probably not. I wondered if she needed the money for something important. Maybe she did. Maybe it was rent. Maybe it was medicine for her mother. Maybe it was survival. Or maybe it was just another night, another score, another stupid tourist who thought he was special. I'll never know. And that's the part that stays with me. Not the anger, not the shame, just the not knowing. The plane leveled off, the seatbelt sign dinged off, the flight attendant started moving through the aisles with drinks. I asked for whiskey. I drank it slowly and stared out the window at nothing. I've been back in Texas for 2 months now. Friends ask how the trip was. I tell them it was fine. Hot, crowded, interesting. They ask if I met anyone. I say no. They ask if I'd go back. I say maybe. But I know. I won't. I can't. At night, alone in my apartment, I think about Fern. I wonder if she ever thinks about me. Probably not. I'm just one of 100 men, 1,000, maybe. I wonder if she's still working that bar in Silom. I wonder if she's told the same story to 100 other men, about growing up in the countryside, about her family, about coming to Bangkok at 18. I wonder if she uses the same lines. You're not lost, you're just starting over. I'm not asking for money. I just want to spend more time with you. I wonder if those words work on everyone, or if I was just especially desperate. I think about that night a lot. The way she made me feel, the way I let myself believe it was real, the way I convinced myself that someone like her could want someone like me. And I realize now that maybe it wasn't about the money at all. Maybe she needed it. Maybe she didn't. Maybe she took it to survive. Maybe she took it because she could. But what I needed was to feel like I mattered. And for one night, I did. Even if it was a lie. Even if it cost me everything in my wallet and a piece of my dignity. For a few hours, I felt alive. I felt wanted. I felt like someone saw me. And maybe that's worth something, or maybe it's not. I don't know anymore. I don't know if I'll ever know. All I know is this. I got robbed in Bangkok. But what really got stolen wasn't in my wallet. It was the belief that someone could see me, the real me. The broken, lonely, desperate me. And want to stay. That's what she took. And I don't think I'm ever getting it back. I go to work now. I see my brother on Sundays. I watch football. I drink beer. Something is missing. Something I didn't even know I had until it was gone. Hope, maybe. Or trust. Or just the belief that I'm still capable of being wanted. Fern took that. And I let her. Because I wanted so badly to believe it was real. I still do.